everybody, it's Ryan, and this time we're going to talk about how the Quran contradicts science. Yeah, I know, I've already made a video on that, but even though I took the challenge and I actually completed it, I didn't get any responses back from the guy that made it, and some other people said that that wasn't the question that the guy should have asked, and I agree with that. Miracles do contradict science. But does the non-miracle parts of the Quran contradict science? Of course, the Quran is supposed to be a miracle all within itself, but let's just take it at face value. Let's just see that if it does say something about the universe in which the people back then couldn't have known. I have read a little bit of the Quran, and I've noticed a lot of strange things that people have mentioned. So I watched some videos of a guy that was talking about the miracles, and the first thing he starts off saying is the astronomy in the Quran. So I said, okay, that would be a good place to start. I'll just go until I find a contradiction. First thing he mentions is the Big Bang is mentioned in the Quran, and it is. God is the originator of heavens and the earth. It's right there. You can read it in the Quran yourself if you don't believe it. The Big Bang is described almost perfectly. Although really it doesn't say how God created anything. I mean, he could have sneezed it out or, whatever. It doesn't say anything about a Big Bang. It just says he's the creator of it, and yeah, all religions have some creator of the universe or something. Creator of all life. So, he gets on to the next thing he mentions is the orbits of the sun and the moon. So that's what we'll be talking about today. Heavenly spheres. Now, some people have said, well, it wasn't really a sphere they was talking about. It was sort of more of a sort of a metaphor, perhaps, or maybe it wasn't translated right. The word falak is orbit, or it could be sphere. Sometimes it's translated as like an iron rod that's bent, so its ends meet. Something that goes along that kind of a path. So a circular path. It's orbit. That is a path, and if they meant this, then they would have said path, but no, they said this word. I'm not really sure. And this is, of course, a description of the motion, which I guess I'll get into. So, I got on another website, and it was talking about the miracles of the Quran again. This is what the guy says. Sun and moon, each one traveling in an orbit with its own motion. 22, 33, and 36, 40. Why did the Quran say that the sun and moon move on their own motion? And if that is true, where did the author get this information? The fact is that the sun and the moon rotate on their axis, are in part animated by this rotating motion. Can anybody say red herring? Because that has nothing to do with what we're discussing. I mean, who cares about the rotating motion? It's not mentioned in the Quran. So why mention this here? Yeah, fish swim in the lakes. It has nothing. It doesn't matter. And this happens a lot, and I've read a lot of these things, and they just give red herrings all over the place. The phrase traveling with its own motion, the verses quoted above, is translation of the Arabic verb. It gives it. This can be translated as they swim. In this case, the verse could read, they swim in its own orbit. Those who translate the verse in this way explain that the term swim refers to the movement of one's own internally generated force, which, of course, does not apply to the sun and the moon. Furthermore, the movement of the swimmer is graceful, measured, and smooth. It's a very fitting description for the movement of the stars and planets, including the sun and the moon. Yeah, I mean, anybody would say that the movement of the sun and the moon is smooth, since it happens every day. I mean, it's measured, graceful. It has absolutely nothing to do with it. But yeah, traveling in its orbit with its own motion. That means that they each have their own path, or a circular, or a sphere, or whatever that they're traveling in. So, let's talk about that. Well, the sun does not travel in an orbit. The moon certainly does. And it's awfully suspicious that the earth isn't mentioned, even though it does travel in an orbit. Even the Quran says that they have made the earth a fixed abode. Maybe it doesn't really mean that. Maybe it means the ground is kind of fixed. By the mountains, of course, it says the mountains. But okay, the sun, does it travel in an orbit? Well, some people have said that this actually is a description of the sun's orbit, the sun's path around the center of the galaxy. oh, okay, if you really want to stretch it that far, I will accept that. Unfortunately, the Quran also says that the sun returns to a fixed resting place. Now it describes it as a throne underneath where the sun goes to the throne underneath the earth. And when it's nighttime, I guess nighttime for this side of the planet, or wherever they were, and then of course it asks fish to come up again, the moon does the same thing. But the sun does not go back to a fixed place, because the galaxy is also moving. Did God not know about that? Well, no, the Quran says that God knows everything, but God must not have taken that into account when He said that the sun moves back to its fixed resting place. So, there's a contradiction right there. If you're going to say that the sun moves in this path when the galaxy is moving and the sun is in the galaxy, it actually sort of makes more of that. It does not come back to the fixed place. There's no, this is what they used to think, this is how it was always translated. Now people are saying that it's this, but that contradicts both of these. Contradicts science, contradicts the Quran.